Good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us, and thank you to these courageous families for joining us today as well. As we observe National Crime Victims Week, the Trump administration and the Department of Homeland Security are more committed than ever to our mission of protecting the American people and our homeland. We have heard far too many stories about American lives that were taken because of illegal aliens who should have never been here in the first place. Today, we're once again reopening an office dedicated to helping the victims of immigrant crime. The Victims of Immigration Crime Engagement, or VOICE office, provides victims and their families with the resources they need to make sure that justice is finally served and their voices are heard. While the Biden administration prioritized foreigners and criminals over American citizens, we are once again have a president in Donald J. Trump and a Department of Homeland Security Secretary and Kristi Noem who are putting the American people first. Now, it is my honor to introduce the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for being patient this afternoon. We were spending some time together with these families behind me and sharing their stories, but also sharing about what this office will do, the work that it will do in bringing grieving families together, but also the advocacy that it can facilitate for them going forward and helping prevent future tragedies like theirs, but also bringing together folks for real solutions and policy, not just at the federal level, but also for state and local level as well. It was a powerful time together, and it did go longer than expected, but for me, I'll be forever changed by the stories these families told, the details they told me, but also the advice and wisdom that they've given from years of suffering and grief, but also knowing that loss in your life changes everything forever. Listening to them speak, you recognize the reality of what grief is, that when you lose someone that is this important to you in your life, that forever the rest of your life is determined by that day. That everything that you reference from that is, though that was before they were taken from us, or that happened after the day we lost Jocelyn, or that happened before Drew was killed in an overdose. And that is what these families' lives were forever changed by what happened to them and what gives them the strength to stand up here now and continue to tell their stories. I truly believe that one of the greatest honors of getting to be the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security is getting to interact with Americans like these families that don't believe that they have special gifts or talents or think that they have something incredible within them that makes them want to stand up in front of people and share their stories. It's that they have incredible strength because of what happened to them, and because they found that strength within them to tell their stories and their testimony, that they literally saved America. I believe that by them telling these stories, they woke up the American public to make a change in leadership in this country, that now we have consequences for people who break the law. Now there is enforcement of our laws, that people know that it matters when you do right, and there are going to be severe consequences when you do wrong. These families behind us stood up and told about their grief and their suffering, what their children went through, what their siblings went through, and because they did that, American families rallied around them, and they put a president in the White House that now is willing to take tough actions to take our country back and put it back on a foundation for which our founders envisioned when they gave us freedom and liberty and the ability to live in a country that truly is special and safe. So thank you for being here, and thank you to all of the folks behind me for sharing your stories. When I took the oath as the Secretary of Homeland Security, I pledged that I would work to protect the American people from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And let me be clear, we have enemies living among us. Because of what the Biden administration has done by opening our borders, they have allowed terrorists, people that are on the terrorist watch list, dangerous criminals, gang members, and criminals to enter our country and to perpetuate violence on American families. And that is going to stop now. The book of Proverbs tells us that it is for us to stand up and to speak for those who can't speak for themselves today. And there are a lot of statistics in the world, but Greg was sharing earlier today about the fact that just since 2019, we have 1 million parents that have grieved and lost their children just because of fentanyl, and the loss that this country is suffering because of drug overdoses and trafficking is taking out the next generation of Americans. So it's up for us, and it's our responsibility every day to speak for them because they can no longer speak for themselves. I'm standing here today with Angel families who lost their loved ones, and as I listened to them, I was changed, not only by what they said, but by watching their faces and the emotion that hit them. Today we have many that told their stories. Alexis, you're familiar with, as she lost her daughter Jocelyn, but also Jackie spoke very powerfully about the fact that, we fear that people will forget those that we love. I think one of the greatest fears of losing people is that people will forget them and that forget what they were like. She talked about how Jocelyn was a happy girl and funny and gifted and talented, and we should remember those traits, not just how we lost her. We also have others here, Sabina, Tammy, and her husband, Jeremiah, who talked about being unfiltered, which I think it's probably time for us to be a little unfiltered when we talk about the reality of these tragedies. Ann and Doris, Doug and Patricia, Greg, Amanda, who, if you remember Amanda telling her story about being attacked in San Francisco, having her skull fractured and still feeling like she didn't go through the suffering that other families did, but her life was changed forever by that illegal alien that didn't face any consequences for being in this country and perpetuating crimes. Agnes, Maureen's husband, Michael, I believe, had to leave already, but I just want to thank all of them for being here. I'm going to tell a little bit of their stories before we give them the chance to speak and talk about what the Voices office will do for them and their families and others in this country. Tammy's daughter Kayla was just 20 years old when she was strangled to death by an illegal alien in 2022. She was in her bed sleeping after working the night shift when her killer broke in and attacked her. Kayla's killer was a member of MS-13, and he came into this country illegally from El Salvador and was able to get in due to the open borders of the Biden administration. He was a known gang member, and he was sentenced to 70 years in prison for Kayla's murder. But he was allowed, even though he had that criminal record in El Salvador, in this country. Ann Ferdner's son, Weston, was just 15 years old. He played football and hockey. He loved to surf, and his life was cut short when he was poisoned by fentanyl in 2022. I think you all remember the powerful speech that she gave at the convention last year that really changed a lot of our hearts. The spread of these legal drugs is one of the most devastating impacts of the open border policies and actions that the Department of Homeland Security is using every department and agency to go to war with. Doug and Patricia's son, Nicholas, was a veteran of the United States Marine Corps. He was driving with his friends to Rocky Point, Sonora in October of 2024 when the Sinaloa cartel members, they ambushed him. They chased him down and shot him in the back while he was trying to escape. And he was just 31 years old and was serving in our military. Now the Sinaloa cartel is one of the cartels that President Trump has targeted and has designated as a foreign terrorist organization. And that is going to bring all of the departments, agencies, and the military to bear to fight these organizations as the terrorists and the enemies of the United States that they are. Now, on what would have been Nick's birthday is the day that the Trump administration announced new sanctions against the Sinaloa cartel criminals as well. We all have been and are familiar with the story of Jocelyn, Alexis's daughter, but it's a story that can't be told enough because of the tragedy of it. She was just 12 years old when two members of the Venezuelan gang, the Tren de Aragua, kidnapped her, they raped her, and they murdered her. And even though they were much bigger and much older than her, Jocelyn still fought her attackers as much as she could. And she was brave till the very end and a very tough girl. Also here with us today are leaders and representatives of many of the groups that fight every single day to support these families, but also fight human trafficking and help us go after illegal activities. I'd like to ask them to stand when I mention their names and have them be recognized for the work and the advocacy that they do. Marcel, you're the president of the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. If you would please stand, thank you for your service and your help. Kelly Dorr, director of the National Human Trafficking Survivor Coalition, is here as well. Rochelle Kenyon, CEO and attorney at Collective Liberty, thank you for your work, especially in the courtroom and all the legal advice that you give. Samantha, Strategy Advisor of the Shared Hope Institute for Justice. I don't know where Samantha is, but we'll catch up with her. Chris Lim, Director of Research and Policy at the Institute for Survivor Care, and also Stacy, the President of Stop Child Predators. Thank you, Stacy, for being here today, and thank you all for your work. These organizations and their representatives here work tirelessly to end this despicable crime. And while the Biden administration may have been the worst offender when it comes to open borders, they were certainly not the first ones. We're still dealing with the consequences of previous administrations. And just last week, we lost another American to illegal immigrant crime. Nate Baker, a 21-year-old student at the University of South Carolina, was killed when an illegal alien ran him over with his truck. This illegal alien, who was driving without a license, he fled the scene and he left Nate to die. Thankfully, the suspect was arrested by the brave men and women of the Columbia Police Department, but it turns out that after he entered the country illegally, he was caught and released by the Obama administration. You know, I was just in El Salvador and I spent some time touring the CCOT prison where the worst of the worst are being held. And to see that there was real consequences for these individuals that are members of gangs and terrorist organizations is a reality of what I think every single person needs to recognize will happen to them if they perpetuate crimes affiliated with these terrorists. It's the prison where we have sent many members of the TDA terrorist organization. We have already deported over 800 members of the Tren de Aragua gang since President Trump just returned to office. It was TDA members and their associates who murdered just 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungary and nursing student Laken Riley last year. And we're getting these dirtbags off of our street and we're making them pay consequences for what they've done to our country. But we know that these two girls are not alone and that there's many families and countless others who have paid the consequences for their violence. Cartels are setting up networks to bring in ingredients for fentanyl into Mexico from China. They're participating with Chinese businesses and PRC affiliates, smuggling it in, laundering money, and bringing it into this country. America is in a new war with China over this issue, and cartel terrorists have been helping them fight it. And terrorists have been helping them, and we are going to fight back with every tool that we have. Just last week, CBP seized 34 pounds of fentanyl in California, and on that same day in Nogales, Arizona, CBP seized 73 pounds of fentanyl, 121 pounds of meth, and 9 pounds of cocaine in a single arrest. In fact, our Coast Guard just made a historic interdiction mission with over $500 million worth of cocaine that they seized. President Donald J. Trump will make sure and will continue to fight for each of these families. And it's why we're here today announcing the reopening of the ICE's Victim of Immigration Crime Engagement, or the VOICE office. The VOICE office began during the first Trump administration, and it was a resource for those victims of crime. And those crimes are related to immigration and illegal immigration as it impacts this country. The Biden administration shuttered this office. And to look at the history of it, there was no reason to do so other than a complete disregard for the tragedy that these families have had to live with. They shut down the only resource that these families had to have a victim's voice be heard and their families to be listened to. Biden prioritized and protected foreign criminals and undermined our national sovereignty and violated our laws, and then closed an office that serviced the victims that were impacted by it. President Trump is righting the ship, and he's reopening this office, and he's going to prioritize not only these families, but all the families that will be impacted by illegal immigration and the tragedy of losing someone because of the consequences of it. The VOICE office will be here to make sure that these victims and their stories will be heard, but it will be heard to wake people up and allow them to continue to impact policy and the direction that this country is going in influencing its leaders to protect our communities. The VOICE office has three different objectives. The first is it uses a victim-centered approach to provide support for crime victims and their families. Second, it will promote greater awareness for services that are available to victims of migrant crime. And third, it builds strong partnerships with community stakeholders, assisting the victims of immigrant crime as well. And as we observe National Crime Victims' Rights Week, DHS remains more dedicated than ever to the mission of protecting American homeland, our citizens, and our way of life. Law and order are back, and we are going to continue letting cops do their job, enforce our laws, and bring consequences to those who break our laws. We're going to help our victims, wrap our arms around them and love them, help them heal while remembering those that they've lost. And we're going to continue to make America safe again. ICE's Voice Office will speak for these that we have lost, and it will be a critical part of all the efforts that we undertake in doing so. So thank you, and may God bless all of you. May God bless these families behind us, and we are so incredibly grateful for their strength and what they have been able to do. Thank you for your strength in telling your stories, and thank you for being an advocate for taking America back and putting it back on its foundation.
Thank you. Sabita Durden-Coulter, mother of Dominic Durden.
Good afternoon. Before I start, I want to say thank you to Madam Secretary for everybody in this team, the highest job to the lowest job. This means the world. We don't feel alone. I don't feel alone anymore. I'm known as Dom's mom, and I brought him with me. That's all I have of my child, my only son, Dominic. I came from Germany with my son the legal way. We didn't climb fences. We didn't dig under fences. We applied. Took us a long time, paid a lot of money, a lot of paperwork. And I still remember receiving my resident alien card. And it was a proud moment because I was allowed to be here. And then I worked 6 years to become a citizen of this beautiful country. That was another, after my son's birth, another one of my most important events in my life. We were proud to be here. My son, he called himself German chocolate because he was born in Germany, and his color explains the rest. We loved it here. He immediately, we lived in Moreno Valley, California, and he immediately got into volunteer work for fire department, for EMF. He would wear his yellow vest, help an old lady over the street, so I called him Barney Fife. And 4.0 student, best friend to everybody who ever met him, love of my life, my rock, got me through a lot. We're both riding motorcycles. He learned how to fly, so he took me for flights. And then he wanted to be in law enforcement, but he couldn't become a police officer because he had a hip injury, so he became a dispatcher for the Riverside Sheriff's Department while working on his pilot license for a helicopter to become a helicopter sheriff for the Sheriff's Department. Life was great. We had plans. I met a gentleman after I divorced Dominic's dad that my son said I would marry, and I did, and we've been together 15 years. But on July 12, 2012, the day after he took my now husband and myself to the airport to fly to Atlanta for a family reunion, we hugged our last goodbye, our last I love you, and we never missed those moments, but I didn't know it was my last because at 5:45 in the morning, my son was heading to work on his motorcycle when an illegal alien from Guatemala with 2 felonies, 2 DUIs, 1 deportation, no license, no insurance, no anything, because he didn't need it. You know, it just works like that. Turned his truck right into my son and hit him head on and killed him instantly. I had to drive by that spot every day. But being out of town, my phone started pinging and ringing, and God made sure I wasn't listening to those voicemails. But I felt something, so I called his job, and they all knew me, and they couldn't speak, so they got the chief on the line. And those words that you hear in movies, and you go, oh, when you hear them about your loved one, you will never forget that moment. I'm so sorry to let you know Dominic got killed this morning. And I thought somebody's playing a prank, because that's what he was. He was a big prankster, but he wasn't. So we had to come back to California. I'm in denial. I don't know what day it is, everything in your world stops. Your heart explodes. You hear it breaking. You can't breathe. And you still, no, he's going to pick you up at the airport. But his best friends picked us up. And since then, right after he was killed, everybody, the DA, everybody was there. But nobody told us it wasn't illegal. So I thought, well, I calmed myself. Accidents do happen. Until a sheriff walked up to me at the accident site where we went every night and said, you need to ask the DA to tell you the truth. And I asked him, I said, it's time to be real. And he said, yeah, he's an undocumented immigrant. And I get very angry when I hear that. If I leave my license at home when I drive, I'm an undocumented immigrant. Otherwise, you're an illegal alien. That's it. And, well, Sanctuary State, the judge knew the killer, and they gave him a deal. He got to bail out for $10,000 cash while we had hearings. I thought he would leave, but he didn't because he knew he was protected. And then the judge told me, after my victim's impact statement, that he wished he would have known all this. But he made a deal with the killer of my only child, and he has to honor that. Now, I thought there were cameras to prank me or something. So he got 9 months, 5-year probation with a misdemeanor, vehicular manslaughter misdemeanor without gross negligence. And he served a total of 35 days. That's all my son was worth, his life. And after I knew it was an illegal, I started speaking. I was deathly afraid of any of this. But I started speaking because nobody would listen. Everybody backed up, the media backed up, until Donald Trump, one of his team members, called my phone and asked if we would meet him in LA. And I hung up because I thought it was a prank call. But they called back and we met him. And I could tell him the story that I was suicidal. I didn't want to live without my child anymore. We were real close. But when I saw him come down the escalator, and I wasn't politically interested, really, and he started talking, I walked through my living room. I thought it was he's starting a new show. And he said something, and then illegal immigration. And I knew that was the moment God saved my life, because it stopped me from thinking that. And then I met him. And I've been fighting, not just for my son, but for all these parents here and that don't have a voice, that get ignored. I get called a Nazi because I'm from Germany. I get called a racist, yeah, clearly. And I learned to count on others. And the voice office was so important. I was here the first time it opened up. And we had somebody to call, somebody to reach out to help us along the way. And I'm forever grateful. I'm forever grateful for this office, for Donald Trump, Tom Homan, and Madam.
Thank you, Sabina. Thank you, Sabina. Acting Director Todd Lyons, ICE.
Thank you, Tricia. Good afternoon. I'm ICE Acting Director Todd Lyons. I'm honored today to host our Secretary, the representatives of all the victim organizations, the ICE Chief of Staff, John Fury, my Deputy, Madison Sheehan. But most important of all, I'm honored by our angel families that are behind us. It was truly humbling and a wonderful experience to sit with you today. So thank you for allowing me to hear your stories. I really appreciate it. I know it's not easy to do, but your courage is beyond amazing. It helps us honor Dominic, Alexis, Kayla, Matthew, Weston, Nick, Ronald, and Drew, as we pursue justice for other families that have been torn apart by crimes with an immigration nexus. Your stories give us a small glimpse into the struggles you face every day and the battles you fight just to find some type of measure for the justice for your children. This also helps people understand how important the ICE public safety mission is. And the strength of your resolve to make the Voice Office keep evolving, to provide better resources and better support to others who have lost so much at the hands of criminal aliens. And thank you again for sharing your children's stories today. As Secretary Noem said, ICE is proud that we have relaunched the Victims of Immigration Crime Engagement Office in accordance with the President's executive order protecting the American people against invasion. The Voice Office lets us take a proactive approach to helping people who have been victimized by criminal aliens. The caring, compassionate staff of the Voice Office work with local victim advocates, law enforcement, and victim service providers to help victims and their families get the services they need, including access to social service professionals who can refer them to victim advocates in state in their local communities, as well as other federal resources that are available. They also help victims, their families, and victim advocates sign up for notifications so they can keep track of a criminal alien's custody status. And in some cases, the Voice Office can also provide victims and families with additional information on an alien's criminal history as well as their immigration history while they're in the United States illegally. In certain cases, the Voice Office also helps victims get a chance to provide that powerful impact statement. The Voice Office helps all victims of immigration-related crimes. This means if someone's victimized by an alien who's in the United States on a visa or who is otherwise here legally, the Voice Office can still help. I want to make it clear that the Voice Office help isn't limited to specific crimes. Whether an alien commits fraud, sexual abuse, murder, drunk driving crimes, battery, or other criminal offenses, we can help. There's no question that Dominic, Matthew, many other Americans have lost their lives to people who should have never been in the United States in the first place. Now, with the President's support and Secretary Noem's leadership and these brave families that are behind me, who are willing to share their stories with the American public, ICE will be better equipped than it has ever been to stand up for victim crimes and connect them with the resources they deserve. Again, thank you so much, and the men and women of ICE are committed to making sure that these type of tragedies never happen again. So thank you. Thank you, Trish.
Thank you, Todd. I'd now like to introduce Maureen Maloney, mother of Matthew Denise.
Thank you, Madam Secretary, Todd Lyons, everyone else with ICE, and everyone else in the administration who is fighting to keep America safe. It is an honor to be here at the relaunch of the Voice Office and speaking to all of you today. To the Angel parents, I'm saddened and angered by your loss, and my heart weeps for you. As Angel families, we are a unique group of victims in that the deaths of our loved ones should never have occurred. Our loved ones were killed by illegal aliens who should never have been in the country. Our loved ones should be alive and living their lives and living their dreams. Our government failed us. They didn't do their job. They did not enforce our current immigration laws, and our loved ones paid the price. In 2016, when President Trump was campaigning on building the wall and securing the border, everybody laughed at him. But President Trump knew the magnitude and consequences of illegal immigration because he had been meeting with Angel families around the country while he was campaigning. Now fast forward to the last 4 years, when the Biden administration had wide open borders and were flying illegal aliens into the country under the cover of night. In that 4-year period, another 10 million illegal aliens entered our country. And that's only the ones that could be counted. These illegal aliens were all unvetted, and they're in our country. How many more criminals, gang members, drug dealers do we have roaming free in our country? How many more innocent victims need to be killed? My beautiful son Matthew was 23 and had just graduated college and had his whole life ahead of him. He was killed by a drunk illegal alien who was driving a truck without a license. The illegal alien ran through a stop sign in a residential area and collided with Matthew's motorcycle. Matthew survived the collision and was getting up out of the street when the illegal alien fled. And when he did, he ran Matthew over, and Matthew became lodged in the truck wheel well. And he was dragged to his death while witnesses were pleading with the driver to stop and banging on his truck. The driver never stopped. Matthew became dislodged. The illegal alien backed up over him again and continued to flee. Matthew was the light of my life. He was the kind of kid every parent wants. He was a good kid. He wanted to be a police officer. He was voted most dependable in high school. He had a smile that lit up a room. And he was the kind of kid that loved everybody he met. My son's death was 13 years ago, and since then, I've been advocating against illegal immigration. I'm a founding member and vice president of Advocates for Victims of Illegal Alien Crime. That's AVIAC for short. And we're a national organization that helps families and victims of illegal alien crime. In 2017, President Trump delivered on his promise to help people victimized by illegal aliens by launching the Voice Office. AVIAC was instrumental in the formation of Voice. Voice is an organization that is staffed by specially trained liaisons who can provide victims and their families information pertinent to the illegal offender's immigration status and custody status. Voice can also address their concerns and questions regarding immigration enforcement and providing local contact for resources and referrals. You know, when a tragedy like this hits your family, first of all, like Sabina described, your world just stops. And as the weeks go on, you realize the world is moving on, but you haven't. Your life stopped the day your child was killed. And I remember every morning after Matthew's death, waking up and shocked that I actually woke up. Going to bed every night, I thought for sure I was going to die of a broken heart. These liaisons at Voice are there for the victims. It's difficult enough going through a judicial system, or in some cases, the illegal alien doesn't even get apprehended. You need specialized people in immigration who can help out the victims. When the Biden administration took over the White House, Alexandro Mayorkas was the head of DHS, and he abolished ICE, along with the much-needed resources to provide it at a time when 10 million people would be crossing into our country. Well, thank God President Trump was reelected, and the Voice Office has been restored, providing the greatly needed assistance and resources to victims of illegal alien crime. Lastly, I would like to thank Todd Lyons, who was the Boston Field Office Director for ICE when my son's killer was released from jail in the very liberal state of Massachusetts. I'd like to thank him for his leadership in successfully getting my son's killer deported. I want to thank Kristi, Noem, President Trump, Tom Homan, everybody involved with getting rid of the illegal aliens in our country and securing our borders so that fentanyl doesn't keep coming across. I want to thank them, and may God bless them and protect them. Thank you, Voice, for assisting victims of illegal alien crime during their darkest days.
Now I'd like to introduce Madison Sheehan, Deputy Director of ICE.
Good afternoon. I'm Madison Sheehan, the Deputy Director of ICE. First of all, I want to thank Acting Director Todd Lyons as well as Secretary Kristi Noem for being able to put this together today and supporting our voice office here at ICE, because it's going to be a real opportunity for us to not only revamp what was first put in place in 2017, but revamp what we can really be doing for the victims and their families on a daily basis. On a daily basis, the men and women of ICE are working and serving in the community and being able to make sure that the stories that we heard today during the roundtable don't have to happen again. And I want to thank all of the families up here for their courage and bravery to tell the stories that they told us. Over the last couple hours, we've heard a powerful impact of the stories that they continue to tell to make sure that it doesn't happen to another family. Whether it's the issues with fentanyl coming over our borders or just violent gang criminals who come over our borders that have been put a stop to thanks to Secretary Noem and President Trump. And these families have a great bit of grit to be able to tell their stories on a daily basis, and that we want to hear about them so that way we can continue to project the strength that ICE brings to communities on a daily basis. And so our voice office is committed to serving the community with our agents of ICE that are out there working with each one of these families. And I'm proud to be able to be part of this team that is revamping this as we can continue down the direction from Secretary Noem and President Trump to not only be able to work on interior enforcement every day, but we're removing these violent gang criminals from our country in order to protect the families that are standing behind me, but also the ones that aren't. And every day, I believe that we work to make sure that the government of the United States is as good as the people that we serve, and that's reflected by those behind me. So I want to thank President Trump, Secretary Noem, and Todd Lyons for the work that we've done to be able to put together the voice office and revamp it to what it should be and should have always been for the victims and their families. Thank you.
Thank you, Madison. And I know we are running a little bit behind, but we will take just a few questions from the press. Please make sure your questions pertain to the topic at hand, which is the voice office and the stories of these very courageous families. We'll start out with CNN. Priscilla.
Hi, Priscilla with CNN. This is a question for the Secretary. You mentioned that in addition to opening up this hotline, you and your team are committing to doubling down on those with criminal records. Related to that, you got a decision this week by the Supreme Court allowing you to use the Alien Enemies Act. Have you commenced deportations already under this measure?
You know, we're working with the White House, and we're not going to talk about specific operations to protect law enforcement officers. I think you're probably well aware that we've seen a dramatic increase of attacks and violence perpetuated against law enforcement under this administration because of the work that they're doing against cartels and terrorist organizations. So we're going to keep operations secure, but we will use the Alien Enemies Act. We will continue to use it to deport people. One of the reasons I went to El Salvador last week was to visit with the president and ask him to continue to take terrorists from the United States of America that don't belong here. And he has committed to continuing to work with us to make sure that we have more TDA members, more MS-13 members that we're able to incarcerate here in this country, deported and in CCOT, and pay the consequences for their actions of violence.
Thank you, Secretary. Thank you. I think I see Ted Hassan, Reuters.
Thank you. This is a question for Secretary Noem as well. Regarding the Venezuelan alleged members of Tren de Aragua who were deported to El Salvador, is there a reason the administration can't release their records or their criminal records if they are indeed dangerous criminals or gang members?
You know, these are all individual cases that we won't get into specifics on, but we have incredible intelligence capabilities at the Department of Homeland Security and casework that has been done not just by ICE individuals, but by other departments and the Department of State, that we're confident that people that are there should be there and they should stay there for the rest of their lives.
Thank you. I think we have time for just one more question. I see CBS. Nicole.
Hi, thank you so much. A question for Secretary Noem. We've heard all about ICE investigations that have brought justice to these families. Earlier this week, it became clear that ICE will begin sharing information and requesting information from the IRS to aid in its criminal investigations. I'd like to know, when will that sharing begin? Given this information is usually guarded, what information will ICE now have access to? And how will that be used to aid ICE in arresting individuals here illegally?
Yes, so this is an unprecedented announcement that in partnership and agreement that has been made between ICE and the department in order to make sure that we're using every tool that we have to go after criminals. I think the American people need to be confident in the fact that their personal privacy will be protected and that this will be a targeted agreement that will go specifically after individuals who do perpetuate violence and enact crimes in this country. We'll continue to talk about the specifics of the agreement, but right now that needs to be unveiled in a way that is transparent to the public and in full, and so we'll be giving that to you.
Well, thank you all. That's all we have time for questions. Please follow up with the Public Affairs Officer for any follow-ups. Thank you to Secretary Noem. Thank you to Acting Director Todd Lyons. Thank you, Deputy Director Madison Sheehan. And thank you to these courageous families for sharing their stories. We are so honored.